Hello, welcome to another episode of the Creating Belonging podcast. Today, I have with me Alex Draper. Alex, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself.
Good morning, afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling in from or wherever you are. My name is Alex. I am CEO and founder of a company called DX here in Chicago. We're here to bring care to the world.
Amazing, amazing. And I'm excited for this conversation, kind of where we'll dig into. I know the work that we do is similar. But before we get started, I just want to see, as we have all of our guests share some of their identities. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, what are some identities that are relevant for you that might come up in this conversation?
Yeah, I identify as my pronouns he, him. I am white. I was born in England in a small little village, I think, with about a couple of hundred people and a lot of sheep and cows. So therefore, I see myself as an immigrant here in America. I only speak English, although two languages. I speak English and American English. So that is bilingual, some sort of, in some ways. And I think that's it.
Yeah. That difference comes in if you're talking about biscuits or cookies and like getting that, like the
Chips,
important things.
chips,
Sorry?
chips or crisps. Yeah, no, I have spent, as you can tell, when I go back to the UK, they call me the Yank, but when I come here, they call me the Brit. So I'm in this transitional. Who am I? I feel like there's an identity crisis if ever you heard of one. No, it's fascinating, and I have adapted. They always say, I think if you move to a country before a certain age, I think it's 12, you adopt the language of that country, and after that, you keep. Like my wife's Polish. She moved here when she's 7, but you wouldn't know. But of course, her parents are moved here and they were older than that, and they speak with a Polish accent. So it's always a little fascinating for immigrants of what they keep and what they don't.
Yeah. And how and when that gets cemented in.
Yeah.
I love it. So I want to start off with one of the questions that I think resonated with you as you were going through some of the creating belonging work. And I'm curious, have you ever covered up a part of your identity because you felt maybe it wasn't welcomed?
Yeah. Couple of times. Well, when I read the book, this was the question. I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, that it stuck out. I'm a white guy and I call myself privileged. I went to a boarding school in the UK. One of the best. My father was had some issues, so we say. He was an extreme narcissist, and of course, sending your son to a boarding school in the UK is deemed amazing. Right? It made him look good, but we didn't have the money for it. We didn't grow up with money, and it wasn't something that sending me to boarding school is something that we could afford. So some major sacrifices were made. So I ended up going to a school where surrounded by extreme affluence, and that was what from the age of 7 years of my life. So yeah, there was a case of I had to say things about and hide things about the real realities of how I grew up and our upbringing and where I lived and the types of things that's I had to tell a story, shall we say, about and fabricate the truth just to fit in. And only looking back now do I just realize how traumatic that was. While I was privileged and went to an amazing school and I'm here because of it, don't get me wrong. Just the trauma. Now as I look back and I'm at an age of reflection, it's amazing by having to not be authentic and to force acceptance over such a long time. Definitely had a huge toll and I'll never forget it. So yeah, that was the one that definitely springs up to mind.
Yeah. So I guess the first place I'm going with that, I'm just thinking about for that, for a kid, like growing up, you were wearing a mask every day, putting that on. And I'm assuming at some point in your transition into adulthood, current day, Alex, you've peeled back that mask, but it probably wasn't like one big reveal. Like it had to be different layers of getting comfortable with just being you out in the world. That's where I want to dig. Like,
Mhm.
tell me a bit about that journey.
I believe many reasons why I moved to America, but I believe escaping that was one of them. What happened towards the latter, again, consciousness, I think when you're 12, 13, there's a degree of just blissful ignorance, but the more conscious you get, the more the prefrontal cortex kicks in and the more understanding of what's going on around you, you start to see, oh, this is this, yeah, my fakeness continued and got more, the lies got worse in trying to fit in. And I actually ended up rebelling towards the end of it, and my grades suffered. And then the pendulum swang, and when my grades failed, I had to go back to school for a further year but then I went to a different type of school where I thought I fit in, and I didn't fit in there either. So that the pendulum had swung for the bad kids who failed. And I was one of those bad kids who failed. The consequences were at the time, of course, the rebellion of, I think there's only so much that you can take before you start to, in my case, rebel, do something. And then that consequence led to me just falling significantly behind. And then I truly believe it's one of the reasons why I moved here, to really just start again. I can be me here. I can add I felt that's another story of me being here, but that I felt that was, I could be me in a different country and not have to hide.
Yeah, it's interesting to to be able to start that over. So one of our guests on the first season, Lauren, who's a dear friend of mine who grew up in London, and she wasn't out with her sexuality when she was in London. And as soon as she moved to the States, started exploring that. And it was this, I remember we joked about how it was like she literally came to the States for freedom. And it was that freedom of, and it wasn't like why she would say that she came here, but it was
Yeah.
that freedom of, oh, I can figure out who I really am. So tell me a little bit about that then, as you were exploring who you are without the need to have a mask on.
It's like there's no filter. So you move to a country, you don't know anyone, because that's what happened here. I had the, I was, I call it lucky and grateful that I had the opportunity to take the then business I was with over here and really start their US business. So here's a phone, here's a laptop, and and off, good luck. So it was a clean sheet of paper. There was no mask. I could literally take the mask off. I didn't have to lie. I didn't have to fit in. And it was liberating. So that was, I think, when you've had to fight for acceptance and you couldn't, I think it, or not be authentic and fight for acceptance. I think to just to take the filters off and the
Mhm.
mask off was liberating, and continues to be. And I think that's my life since I moved to America, especially in the latter years now. It's just that now I have the luxury to look back and think it was really fascinating. Our company, the team, did a lifeline exercise where the 10 major positives and negatives in your life, you map them, you on a scale of 0 to 10, how stressful were they and what were the impact. Doing that exercise really was, because I'm just becoming more vulnerable. I'm not too sure the word vulnerable is Brits do very well, or Europeans in general. Just for context on that note, my mother, we grew up with a stiff upper lip. You weren't allowed to be vulnerable. We were not allowed to talk about our emotions. I was never allowed to say I don't fit here at school. And my dad sure as hell made sure there was no negotiation of where you're going to school, regardless of the fact that I was not happy. It was very obvious I wasn't happy. So there's that. So the lack of vulnerability, the inability to make decisions and be given the autonomy, regardless of how I felt. And I think that's a very Britishness Islander thing when you're come from a place where we've bruised and battered and survived. But I don't think that's a good thing. But for what we're talking about today, with belonging, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be able to speak about what's going on inside. And also people have to listen, of which I had neither of those. So just a reflection of that was like, gosh, it's great to be able to reflect, but it's definitely, which allows me to make sure that my kids don't grow up in the same way in which I did. And they can, in your world, feel like they belong.
Yeah, yeah. Something I'm curious about. So I've actually working on the second edition of the book. And one of the areas that I know I'm continuing to dig. In fact, today I was doing some academic searches for authenticity, trying to find more of how we're defining authenticity. I wanted to find it more further and really dig in. And so because this is you exploring and finding that authenticity, I'm curious, as you've navigated that journey of taking off that mask, I would imagine, and so I'm going to blow this up a little bit. I would imagine that in that kind of pre Alex moving to the States, there's a lot of it's almost the reverse of fake it till you make it. Like you're faking it. And so there's a part of that becomes you, right? And so I'm just curious in that journey, how much of that you have what have you learned about yourself? And then what have you had to shed that actually wasn't you?
Mm, I think when you a group of friends, number one, shedding a group of friends that I don't think they would. I think if they listen to this podcast, be like, "What?" So there's a group that knows you for that, and when you've faked it for so long and had to live in the skin of someone that you're not really. And there's a case of, is it easier to face that or just drop it? So in that case, a group of number of friends that I grew up with no longer talk to, and
Mhm.
that was a part of the journey. The conversations, just the conversations that you to be able to have these types of conversations with family members, as I have done in recent years, and you just get you. There comes an age where, or a part in your life where something happens to where you can just it all just starts to come out. Which I'm in that I'm in that stage, but I'm 45, so I'd say what when my dad died last year, and so this is all very recent. So when my dad died, that was the trigger for me to truly be me. So under his watch, I have there's always been a degree of I can't be me. I just can't be the Alex. So this is only that was November last year. So we're a year anniversary of me being able to shed and really just live the real Alex without what's my dad going to think of this? What's my dad going to think of that? And that's inhibited my ability to be true, authentic Alex. So that's just a context and moment in life. And maybe all of us have that, not quite that, but a trigger to which we can, those who have had to have hid behind something and wore a mask, there must be a trigger for all of us that just allows us to then be our true, authentic selves. And for me, that was my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. So I'm gonna compare that to, in my experience of, like, when there's an event that lets you drop your guard. So in my experience as a gay man, like, that has been like, the coming out process is that shedding, right? I'm sharing something with the world that is the one thing that most people might reject me for. And so once that's out, once you've let that go, then you're cool. Now we
Yep.
start to be and explore who I really am. And for some people, they may never have that, whatever that coming out experience is, right? And so it seems like you've had a couple of layers. So one was coming to the States where you could live in a place that, like, you've shed the mask that you had to wear. And then the second piece is your father passing and not needing to pass whatever you're doing, needing to pass his approval. So I'm curious what you found that in the past year of what's changed for you.
The ability to speak my mind links into psychological safety. Maybe it is. I feel free, freedom of speech. I think the being able to voice exactly how I feel, to voice, to look back at my life and really put it out and go, that wasn't cool. And oof, what happened here? I just think it's free. I feel, for whatever reason, more free than I've ever been to be able to speak my mind and be vulnerable and open and talk to people about who I really am because I don't have to look over my shoulder.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's no police. There's no police going to come arrest me and say, you can't say that. So what I don't know if that is my dad, if it's just age and just maturity, but
Mm.
whatever it is, I just yeah, it's I have never felt more of an ability to be true, authentic Alex. No.
So you've been on this journey continuing to find your own authenticity. I'm curious then, so I want to flip to the other side of just the between authenticity and acceptance and flip to the other side. How has how have those experiences of needing to mask, how have that impacted the way that you approach acceptance with others?
I think it's a as the years have gone by, when it comes to this side of it, on the acceptance front, it's a I always I've less felt the need to explain things about the way I am to others and the need to, hey, I went to Shrewsbury School. And again, the element of the mask doesn't, I had created habits and processes and just the way I taught. And that there was a need to express this is who I am to others. And I don't think that has subsided to the point where I don't even feel the need to talk about that and feel the importance of, hey, where did you go to school? Or what did you do? So just there's a that used to be a thing. Maybe it's a British thing, but hey, where do you go to school? There's definitely a
Yeah.
class in the UK. But that was a thing. That was a habit that I had, which then of course, in terms of cognitive diversity and diversity, it pigeons you when you think like that, and it becomes habit. It just it swayed the conversation, and now it's again going to freedom. It's I don't I'm I don't have no filter. I am there for the other person. My ears are bigger than they were before. Like, am I going down a different path?
No, I think that makes sense. I think the this idea that your ears are bigger, metaphorically, I like that, but I also like the shifting of how the questions you're asking to almost filter through understanding who someone is. So that what school did you go to is very common.
Mm,
And I'm actually relating to that. But on the flip side, a way that I've navigated that. So when I was early in my professional career, I hadn't yet finished my undergrad, but I was working on a team of 6 people. 6 out of 8 had advanced degrees. Forget about just undergrad. 6 out of 8 had advanced. One of them had just their undergrad. And then Justin had none of that. I had not finished my undergrad yet. And so there was a lot of imposter syndrome. And it was just automatic. If you're here, you obviously have some formal education, right? And so it was very common. Oh, where did you go to school? And I would just very plainly answer, I went to Iowa State because that's where I started. I never said I finished. I didn't say anything else. I just said that's where I went to school because that wasn't a lie, but it also wasn't the full truth.
mm,
And I actually don't talk about that whole journey a ton because there's all of the stigma that comes around all of that. But I can understand that side of it, right? Where when someone's asking that question, it is very much a qualifier of who are you and do you come from, did you go to a state college or did you go to a private college? Like Harvard versus where I just went to a community college. There's going to be a lot of value judgment that can come into that conversation. And so I do think, like, I'm hearing you say that I don't ask someone where they're going to school as like a small thing, but actually I think it's huge in acceptance is finding ways to get to know people in thr without typical filters.
good. So I was on the rightish path of acceptance, which is
Yeah.
again less filters, more the more like isn't anything good in life comes from your ability to listen, talk less, listen more, and be curious. Which, of course, if you have filters and if you're trying to be accepted, oh, I will only talk to people from this school or from this bucket, whatever that bucket is, then of course that's a problem. The more you're
Yeah.
trying to fit in and be accepted for that, that destroys cognitive diversity and cognitive thought because you're just channeling into one area, which is not
Yeah.
good, I take it, for the modern workplace or home or anything.
Yes. So yeah, I think it is that shift in your perspective on how you're getting to know others
Yep.
is a part of that acceptance piece.
Yep. Yeah. And I think when you go to an elite school, I don't know, I don't understand the research, but I can only imagine just the acceptance piece must be huge when you have that much privilege. Unless I'm sure you put deliberate thought into it, it will drive on the authentic and acceptance place. I wonder what it does on those two spectrums, or not just elite school, elite sport, elite anything. When you're in the 1% of anything, I'm sure there's challenges with both authenticity and acceptance.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say this anecdotally and not based in any research, but in my experience, that elitism leads to inauthenticity because we are trying to fit this mold of who and or it becomes everything that we are, right? Like you go to an elite school and that's like what you lead with of how you introduce yourself, as opposed to, okay, cool, that's where you went to school. Congratulations. Like, what else is interesting about you? Right. So there's that. I'm just going to say anecdotally, I have had that experience with individuals.
Right.
And then I think the other piece is when you come from that elite perspective, you also um, put yourself in a place where others don't fit the level that you need to be at. Right. And I'm also I'm saying that claiming of any elite place, but also the acceptance piece. Over the past year with my therapist, have been working on Justin is quick to assess people and determine whether or not they fit his intellectual level, and then makes decisions from there. And I'm like breaking that down because that's something that I need to deal with and address.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah. Um, So I'm curious, as in this conversation, in the work that you do, what are some of the parallels that you might see?
The work that we do is, I think, as I started the conversation, DX is to bring care to the world. But what is care? Care are the human skills that gets the hard work done. Clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity. And I think a lot of what you're just talking about is, especially in the A and the R and the A, the R, and the E. I truly believe not much good happen for us to have the time and presence to be able to do what we are doing, right? Having a conversation about life, about ourselves, in order that we can be better human beings. We can be more authentic, and we can have more acceptance. So just to do that, you need time and energy. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have in this world is we don't have the time and energy to be doing what we're doing. To see a therapist, to be introspective, retrospective, and to think versus do. America and much of the world is all about doing, and we reward the do. And if you're doing, you're not thinking. And this, what we're talking about, it needs thinking and deliberateness and intentionality. So care is in the workplace and any community, any team of humans. With my wife and my kids, we're a team. The team needs clarity, and if it doesn't have clarity, the opposite of clarity is fear. Fear
Mm,
drives the dark side. If Darth Vader comes out and bad things happen, right? We can't speak up if we don't have clarity, because the opposite of clarity is fear. So we need
mm,
clarity, and if we starve people of clarity, bad things happen. Autonomy, we need autonomy, because if you try, the opposite of autonomy is control. And who loves to be controlled? Put your hands up. No one. No one likes to be controlled. There's elements of control, but we don't like to be controlled. So we need to give autonomy. We use
mhm,
that by using our 2 ears and asking lots of questions and being curious, flexible, and adaptable. Relationships, the opposite of relationships is silence. The opposite of what we're doing right now, right? The inability to be vulnerable and speak up is a problem, but that's where relationships comes from. The opposite of equity is unfairness. So for those things, the opposites are what stops us from speaking up and being able to more than likely lean into our true authentic self, because I can't be vulnerable and speak up. That's a problem. So care is a framework, playbook that we're bringing to the workplace for leaders to care for their teams and give them the right adapt and match clarity, autonomy, relationships, and equity. Because the closer the variance between what a leader gives and what a team member needs, the more equity is felt. So I think there's a direct correlation, because what we're trying to do as a business is get leaders to intentionally delegate, use their time in the right buckets to get their team members to speak up and be more comfortable about being, go figure, vulnerable. So I think there's a
mhm.
direct correlation between what we're doing. We're trying to help people think and help people be more authentic by speaking up and being vulnerable, like what my journey's been like, which is just not 45 years long. And we can do it in a couple of years, that'd be great, because there's a lot of pain in the workplace right now. So I think there's a direct correlation between our work.
Yeah, I can definitely see I see I think your model is very much aimed at leadership, right? And
Yeah.
so that clarity piece is key. But if we look at just belonging, I think there's the autonomy relates to authenticity, and the relationships and equity relate to acceptance, right? And because that's like how we all coexist in a way that we get to be ourselves, do the work that we enjoy in a way that we enjoy it, and belong with others. Yeah, it was interesting. I wanted to play that and see those parallels. So thank you for indulging me.
No, but no, my to that last point, my favorite question in relationships came from a lady called Anne Marie. Is in a leader's the question I should be one of the questions I should ask as a leader is, what's tell me one thing that I don't know about you, but I should that will help our relationship. I think that is a great question that creates more authenticity and belonging at the same time. Because if you're open and I'm asking you, hey, tell me something I don't know about you that would improve our relationship, it's like, oh, I love that question. I use that question. It's amazing what I learn about people when that question's asked. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's I think there's a lot of commonality between sense of belonging and leaders just caring for their people, which they
Yeah.
don't do a very good job of, by the way.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. How can people find you, find out more about your work?
Just check me out. LinkedIn's the easiest one. Alex Draper, DX Learning, and you'll see this face pop up. There's a newsletter on there. Sign up to that. I just put on my own vulnerable. The more as a year goes by, the more stories come out, as you've heard. So no, that's a great way to learn about what we're doing and the work that we do. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best one.
Great, and I'll make sure we include a link in the show notes for that. So, thank you again for joining me today. It's been fun to talk to you as always, and everyone else stay tuned for another episode of the Creating Belonging podcast. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Justin.